You're watching HCAM TV.
Hello and welcome to HCAM TV and the Thursday edition of the Hopkinton Hangout Hour. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi, Mom. Good to see you. And today we have a couple of good segments for you. One, we'll be talking with local artist and sculptor Michael Alfano. And our second one, we'll be talking about some interesting things you may find in your own backyard. So we'll get to that one. That's a surprise. My co-host for the first half hour is our own Tom Nappy. Hello, Tom.
Hi, Jim.
Hi. And welcome, Michael. Thank you for coming on our show today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
All right. So where I like to start when I'm first interviewing somebody here is really at the beginning. So can you tell me what about you becoming an artist? When did you know, and how did that come about?
Well, I actually started sculpture mostly after college. I did a little bit before time, and I grew up in New York City. So I studied at the Art Students League, which is a very famous school in about 57th and 7th Street, where many well-known artists, Norman Rockwell, Georgia O'Keeffe, they all got their start and learned to sculpt at that institution. The wonderful thing about the Art Students League is they work with live models, basically from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Many classes, drawing, painting, sculpting. Our sculpture studio is down in the basement.
Wow, that's really kind of cool. I'm just curious. So now this is a cliche, right? You always hear about people, like when people say, "Oh, I'm going to be an artist," their family says, "Oh, that's really nice, but you know, you need to be able to make a living too." So did you have a supportive artistic environment?
Well, I had a supportive artistic environment and family. And of course, my wife and family are very supportive. I also have a finance degree from SUNY Albany. So again, not so much that I was into art before that, but I went to business school, got the degree, was a stockbroker for a while, and then basically decided this isn't for me, and I'm going to be a sculptor full time.
Right. Wow. Was it scary making that transition, or did you feel comfortable and you're confident?
Oh, absolutely. It was very scary. It was a tough time. Again, I was working in the stock market. I ended up quitting, doing a cross-country, actually hitchhiking trip from basically the perimeter of the United States, about, 10,000 miles or so. Mm-hmm. And someplace in Utah, I decided I was going to be a sculptor without really any experience or classes or any background. Funny story is the only class that I dropped out of in college was actually an art class, my only art class in college. It was just a bunch of frat boys that were in there for an easy A. I'm like, yeah, this is not for me.
Wow. Now, were you married to Linda at that time?
No, we didn't get married until 98 or so.
Okay.
So
that's
I graduated college in 91.
That's a great story, Michael. Thanks. Now, how did you come from New York to live in Hopkinton?
I hear that little bit of a New York accent there when you say New York. Sorry, I just had to point that out. Well, I studied at Boston University. I traveled around the world a bunch and then finally ended up at Boston University doing a sculpture program there. And had my first studio at the old Danforth building in Framingham, right on Route 135, which was the mill buildings.
Yeah.
And then looking to buy a house, we lived in Framingham for a while and then came out to Hopkinton, which is, beautiful area.
Yes, yes, definitely. Yeah, I went to BU as well, so it's nice to
Okay.
see a fellow alum.
Absolutely.
All right. So I'm curious because I have no idea what what it takes to actually make a sculpture. Now, I see a lot of your pictures do a lot of work with, like, with bronze and things like that. And I am just like curious if you can share with us any of the technique, not yet talking about the concept, right? But just like how do you take your vision and get it from your mind into this large cast? I believe they're cast sculptures.
Yes, it is a very long process. Some pieces, some of the larger pieces have taken uh, 5 to 7 years. Some of them are much quicker than that. I'm going to screen share here.
Okay.
Yeah, we would go here. So basically, I sculpt in clay, make a mold, and then cast into bronze and other materials. And so one of my newest pieces, which is a sculpture that kind of talks about our the pandemic and social distancing. I'm not sure if you can all see this.
We see it. It's a mask that has a face
Yes.
on it. Yeah.
So this one is currently called Life Mask. It is my newest piece. You're looking at the clay sculpture there. So again, through various different methods, come up with the idea.
Mm-hmm.
So this one creates a face in the shape of a mask. So really talking about the humanity behind the social distancing and the mask and all of that. So you see the earliest rendition of the sculpture in clay, and then we make a mold, which is sort of if you think of a Jello mold, where you pour or press something into it, it takes that shape, it hardens, takes that shape, and then becomes a final product. And that could be in resin or bronze or plaster. Many of your viewers may have cast in plaster or chocolate or something else of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
You can cast in just about anything.
Yeah. When I was in high school, the movie Conan had just come out with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I really liked his sword. So in shop class, I did a cast with aluminum, and I made like the sword hilt.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but I never had a blade, so it really wasn't that useful. Now, do you lose the clay sculpture in that process, or is that able to be preserved after you make the mold around it?
Well, the clay is not permanent, so there would be no reason to keep it. I try to be as green as possible, so all of the clay is actually recycled to make a new sculpture. So the clay that you see here might have been George Brown, the sculpture on the Common. It might have been, any number of things before this. And it's just amazing that, all the spirit of different things that has been goes into the newest sculptures.
Right. Oh, that's so interesting. And by the way, I know that at one point you were inviting people to make suggestions for a name for that piece. And I just want to say, Life Mask is a great name. I really like that.
Thank you. Yes.
Now,
and we got some really great suggestions and thoughts about the sculpture.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. Is the clay fired, or does it stay kind of like wet and then you reuse it?
No, so it's not fired. I don't use ceramic clay is the clay that you would think of as being fired, like ceramic mug or plates or pottery. So when you fire it, then that becomes a permanent object that can't be reused. This particular clay is more like a wax. And so I actually formulate my own clay material, sort of the chemistry composition of the clay. And so I can make it harder or softer depending on the requirements that I need. And you can actually heat it up, make it liquid, paint with it, pour it, do all kinds of crazy things with this particular clay.
No kidding. That's amazing.
So it is pretty amazing, yes.
All right, Tom.
I was just curious. So how long does the clay last? Does it ever expire or get too hard to use or anything like that?
If you take care of it, the clay will last forever. There's stories about some of Leonardo da Vinci's clay that he used being sort of passed down through the generations. So that's like, 500-600 years old. So this kind of plastilina, which is an oil-based clay, can really last forever.
And how much do you have? Because
Well,
I'm just wondering, like, did you have a George Brown statue sized piece of clay?
yes, I do. So early in my career, I actually bought 2,000 pounds of clay because, you could do it and it's a whole lot less expensive that way. And so I've just been recycling that clay over and over again. So when I do the big pieces, it's actually mostly not clay. So essentially to get it to stand up for a big piece, you make a metal armature, which is the support. And then I actually use styrofoam, if you think of your blue board home insulation type foam.
Yeah.
So that stuff you can cut, carve, glue together basically to make almost like a mannequin. And so I actually make, if you can think of it as a mannequin with the metal wire as the skeleton.
Yeah.
And then I can actually bend and shape each of the arms, each of the limbs to, again, have the exact pose that I want. Again, similar to a mannequin. And then the real art comes in when you sculpt the clay over top of that styrofoam base.
Right. I'm just curious, when you have a clay piece and you're putting something like resin or something surrounding it that's going to be a bronze piece, what kind of material is used? Because it has to withstand the heat of melted bronze, right?
Yes. So there's two processes: a cold cast, which is a resin, and then the bronze. The bronze is poured at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So you're correct. So you have to use what's known as the lost wax bronze casting process, which you may have heard about on PBS or some of these other historic shows. They've been doing bronze casting for over 5,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very traditional. So typically when I do my pieces, I make the clay sculpture, make a mold, which is a negative, almost like a Jello mold.
Yeah.
Then to do a bronze, you pour wax into that mold.
Oh.
Then take that out, make a ceramic shell, which is almost covers the front and the back of it. Melt out that wax, which is the lost wax part of it.
Yeah. And
then you can pour in the molten bronze at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's basically like pouring liquid lava. If you think of like seeing images of Hawaii and the lava flowing down the rocks and it's all glowing bright hot.
Yeah.
If you think of that being poured from a big kettle into almost like a coffee cup. So like filling your coffee cup with 2,000 degrees hot molten metal.
Yeah.
Let that cool down to black. So it's like a solid block of metal. And then you chip away that shell or coffee cup or whatever you poured into it. Yeah. And then you have a sculpture that will last thousands of years.
Wow. So at one point there was a wax George Brown statue.
Absolutely, yes.
So, but it's not solid, is it?
It is not solid. The bronze wall is about half an inch thick or so.
Okay.
And with the metal, that's all you really need.
Now that's what this, Michael, is the question I've always had in my life. I understood what you described as the lost wax process, but when you make your wax, then you put something around it, and then you melt that all out, you just have a cavity that is your sculpture. When you pour metal into it, how do you get it so it's just a half an inch thick and not solid?
Well, again, you have a mold part in the front and a mold part in the back.
Oh.
So the part that's the wax, which is a half an inch thick, is when that wax melts out, essentially you have a very thin cavity. Again, like if you think of a coffee cup, if you squash it together, so instead of being round, you have a very flat, thin coffee cup that's a half an inch thick,
Yep.
and whatever length or width.
Okay.
And then you can pour the molten bronze into that. And it's cast in many pieces. So George Brown with maybe 10 or 15 pieces. Then those all have to be welded together. We do metal chasing, which makes all the seams invisible.
Yep.
Sandblast, patina, and all of that good stuff.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. That is enough on the technical side, because I'm really interested in what makes you tick. Okay. So when I like being commissioned for a piece of work is one thing. Now, I know you were commissioned to make the George Brown statue.
Absolutely.
When you are sitting around and you're thinking and you are coming up with a piece of art that you want to make, what motivates you? What kind of things do you go for with your art? What are you trying to express?
Sure. Well, I really try to express very contemporary things that we're going through, again, similar to the life mask sculpture. So, and I try to have a piece that really speaks to the humanity. So the life mask, and I'm going to screen share and go through a couple of photos here on my website. You can also see, the viewers can see my work on my website, michaelalfano.com.
Great.
Again, you see the life mask here. Again, really trying to capture the humanity and beauty of the human form behind the mask, and getting at what we're going through with the social distancing and the quarantine in a very somewhat light and fun way, but also somewhat serious. This is another new piece called Tangled in Truth. And so the figure, and can you see the sculpture there?
I can. Tell me about that.
Is it coming up on your screen there? Or is that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So you see the figure kind of lifting up a book, and then the pages of the book are kind of scrolling around him, kind of talking about how in present day truth has been eroded and kind of gets so entangled that it's very hard to find out what the actual truth is and where information came from. And so the figure, he's raising up the book, so really honoring the truth and the facts, but also with a hand kind of protecting himself from it. So while there's a desire for the truth, there's also a defensive mechanism that's coming in. And I think this is also a age-old response that we all have.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful quote that goes with this particular sculpture, something like, "The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off."
Now, was that your signature?
That's from Joe Class. From
Okay.
Steps of Happiness. So each of my sculptures has a quote that goes with it. And so I really like to have both the literary, philosophical thoughts to go with the sculpture, as well as the image. And I actually have the sculpture behind me. I'm going to shoot around and you can actually see it in 3D here.
Oh, okay.
There we go. And so you can see the book and the hand being held up there.
Yeah.
A little bit of show and tell.
Oh, that's nice. Now, I noticed on the picture on the bottom of the scroll, there were letters. Is that your signature on the bottom of the scroll?
At the bottom of the scroll is actually the word truth.
Okay.
And I don't know that I can get I can try to screen share again so you can get it. But it says truth. And so essentially, as it scrolls through all of its different permutations, we hopefully get to what is the truth. And the truth can be very fluid and it can be very different for different people.
Right. And this was a piece that was not commissioned. It was something that you're just expressing.
That's right. Yes. So many of my pieces are pieces that I do on my own. Again, they, to try to sell them or what have you. So, really speaking to the contemporary thoughts and processes and things that we're going through.
Right. Is that multiple pieces put together, or is that one single piece?
This particular one is cast in one piece.
Okay.
The one that I was showing you is the first resin sculpture, and then I'm actually casting a bronze.
Oh, I see.
So the bronze is quite a bit more expensive than the resin. So many people go with the resin. It looks very similar, so you can really enjoy the sculpture for a fraction of the cost.
Right. So you were saying that some of these can take over 5 years of your time to work on?
Yes, they can be. Again, I'm going to screen share here, and just let me know that the pictures on the website is coming up. Okay, so you should be seeing the website here again.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a recent piece that I did of Milton and Rose Friedman. Milton is he passed away a number of years ago. He was the Nobel laureate in economics. And so this is a life-size sculpture of them at their foundation headquarters up in Vermont, in Fairleigh, Vermont. So this was actually installed in October. We were supposed to have an unveiling this May, which has been postponed until next fall. And there's actually another view, quite a
that's really
panorama. Cool. There. So this one took a bit over a year or so. So similar to the George Brown sculpture.
Okay.
I'm just going to pull that up if the viewers don't remember it. So again, there's George Brown on the Hopkinton Common at the start of the Boston Marathon.
Yes.
And let's see here. And George Brown has been staying safe behind the mask.
Oh, yes. We heard this story. Yeah.
Yes. So that was put up with a 26.2 foundation and Tim Kilduff. So it was very exciting.
That's really cool. It makes you think.
Yes, definitely. And so many of my other monumental pieces are in Massachusetts and local areas. So this is a sculpture of the LaRusso family, which is in Barnstable at the Historical Society. And so while they were raising money and different sort of political things going on to secure the location and whatnot, this particular sculpture took about 5 years or so. Not so much all sculpting, but also the making the maquette, getting approval, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And if you remember with the George Brown sculpture, it was actually at the police station for about a year before it went into the common.
And is the LaRusso family a functional bench? Would somebody go up and sit next to them?
Yes, they can. Yes. And that's a fun thing about many of my sculptures. They can be functional. This is another one called Peace Offering. Again, very timely. So it is a functional bench. It's about 6 feet long and 19 inches high. So it's a comfortable height to sit on. So it features a dove and a hawk. So if you see the dove on the right-hand side of your screen, and the dove on the left-hand side, sort of towards the bottom of the sculpture. So again, talking about war and peace and the hope that people will sit and dialogue.
And where is that piece?
Well, there's one here at the high school, at the Hopkinton High School, which is in the front lobby. There is also one on the Newbury rail trail program.
Okay. I asked because I know that bench.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm interested on the bottom on the right with the can that's pouring a face out?
This
That
one,
one. That
yes,
looks intriguing to me. Tell me
yes.
about that.
This one is a lot of fun. It's called Poured. And so talking about pouring your creativity out into the world. So you can see the can of paint kind of flowing over the face
Mm-hmm.
and pouring your creativity out into the world. Uh, a recent series kind of talked about the act of creativity. So making the sculpture, I was also featuring the creativity that brings about the art. This is another similar one that's also very interesting called Stroke of Genius.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Now, what is that material?
so this one is in the resin and it's
Okay.
been painted. So it talks about creating your perfect masterpiece in one fell stroke. So if
Mm-hmm.
you imagine from the can of paint, the brush creating the artwork from the can of paint to the brush in one stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And we hear stories about Beethoven writing symphonies perfect. Sometimes we nail these things right off the bat, and it's
Yeah.
the artwork is done in a few hours or a night, and it's like, wow, where did that come from? And
Now,
sometimes it takes many years.
who's your model for that?
Well, I try to. So again, like the George Brown sculptures, many of the portrait sculptures are specific people and very specific models. So I did Ted Kennedy, Barack Obama, a number of other people where I really need to nail the portrait. These ones, I am trying to get more of a universal face and a universal look.
I see.
This is another recent one. Again, talking about the hope for our country and finding a good solution. So if you can see you see a face profile.
Yep.
The letters on the right side of the face spells the word hope.
Okay.
I try to keep things a little bit subliminal. So you have to, there's an active discovery.
Yep.
It's always nice when people see a piece of art and they have it for a month or two and they're like, oh my gosh, I never realized that spelled hope on the face, And it's like, there's this real discovery. And then kind of the stars kind of flowing off of the flag.
Yeah.
Again, talking about unity and trying to keep everyone together and working, sort of on the same agenda.
Right. And I think that's kind of a style of yours where I see where you have faces that are not just like a straight face, but they're blocks or they're different segments that come together to make a face. And I think that's an interesting style.
Yes. Again, that's the exciting part of it, is being able to make some interesting pieces
Yeah.
that, keeps you compelled. This is another new piece. This one is called Self-Reflection. Again, the self-reflection that we've all had during quarantine, being socially distant from everyone else.
Yeah.
And so you see on the right side of the screen, this larger face, and then you can see two smaller faces on the left side, one facing up, one facing down. Again, the sort of act of self-reflection. And the interesting thing is the two smaller faces share the chin, which is sort of the nostril of the nose. So being able to use these anatomical features to create different features and blend together different faces or different figures.
How do you start that? Do you start with like saying, I want to embody self-reflection, and then do you sketch it out, or you just play around, not play around, but work in clay? How do you come to that?
Play is the right word. So again, many of my pieces, I'm thinking about it in my head. Again, there's I don't know, I think Bobby Orr, one of the hockey greats, used to talk about he'd go to sleep thinking about how he could score a goal in a new and innovative way. He was always thinking, how can I score the next goal? What kind of crazy thing can I do?
Yeah.
And so it really starts in the laboratory of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I go to paper and play with the clay, I'm trying to figure out how these things will, come to fruition in a way that really speaks, is compelling, looks good. Many of my sculptures don't make it out of the basement just because it's a great idea, but it just doesn't ever, execute well.
Yeah.
And so that, that's a challenge.
We have shows that go like that too.
I bet, yes.
That never make it out of the basement. All right. Hey, if you wouldn't mind just stopping your share, we have
Sure.
used up all of our time, and I just want to tell you, it's been fascinating listening to where your art comes from and some of the process behind it. And thank you so much for sharing your talent and your time with us.
Very good. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure, and all the best, and stay healthy.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, so we're just about to transition to our second half hour. And in between that, if Matt has a update, he will pop in and give it to us. Hi, Matt.
Hi. So just as a little HCAM insider for the rest of the week, tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. we have Keep Moving with the Senior Center, and then follow that on the Hangout Hour. We have Gabe Prokowski coming in at 2 p.m. who's their musician, and then obviously at 7 p.m. we have the Friday Night Wake Up Call, and then on Sunday we have the Combined Christian Service. If anyone's looking to watch that. So we have a lot coming in the rest of the week, and then obviously we have a full week next week.
Wow. Okay. That's great. Thank you for that update.
No problem.
And let's see, we're going to transition now. I see. Oh, there we go. He just popped in. I saw a little bit of a problem with the video, and I was like, oh boy, but you pulled it off.
That's right.
All right. We have a special guest for this half hour, and it's my son, Andrew. And I invited him on the show because he has been doing something really cool and opened my eyes to some nature that I had no idea we had surrounding us. So, Andrew, you're here to talk to us about your birding.
That's right. I've been going out in the backyard, in the area around the backyard, and finding some birds that I didn't know really we even had in our area, which has been really exciting.
Now, how long have you been thinking about birding and interested in that?
Probably an interest that's developed in the last couple of years. Going out to the different Mass Audubon sites, which are really great, and viewing birds with my binoculars.
Yeah, and Eagle Fest. How could we
Oh yeah,
forget about Eagle Fest? Yeah. So what I find fascinating about this, quite honestly, is if somebody had asked me how many birds are around here, I'd probably be like, some sparrows, and we know black-capped chickadees. We can see some hawks up in the sky, but there are some birds that have just blown me away with their color and their song. So tell us a little bit about like your path, because we know we have the beaver pond path, and like what kind of terrain are you tromping through here?
So over the last couple of weeks, I've been exploring a former beaver pond just kind of behind the house, which is sort of a meadowy area with some woods on either side, which creates a really great habitat for a number of bird species, especially red-winged blackbirds, but also warblers and other interesting sort of meadow-dwelling birds.
Yeah. I think we should give our viewers a little taste. I think that you should show us some of the pictures that are amazing. And by the way, the pictures that Mom sent me, I've had some trouble getting off my phone. So you can go ahead and show those too.
All right. Well, one of the first birds we saw was a scarlet tanager, which I had no idea that we even had in this area, and was actually, I believe, your discovery. Dad?
It was I think I told the story. I came out of the house, I thought there was a little red leaf by the front of the road, and it was a bird. It was unbelievable. So if you get the photographic evidence, you can please go ahead and share your screen with that.
All right. All right. How do I do that? The screen
On
sharing?
the bottom, green share screen.
Oh, there it is.
Yep.
Okay.
Pops up a window, and then you can select which window you want, and there you go.
All right. Well, this is the scarlet tanager that we saw.
Looking
And
like a leaf.
yep.
Oh, wow, look at that.
A very, very bright leaf. But as you can see, it's like a very bright red, similar to a cardinal, but maybe a little more of a scarlet color, with a black back to its wings, which is really, really pretty stunning. I'll zoom in a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's not my best resolution photograph.
no, but you can still see how brightly colored this bird is.
By the way,
and-
Andrew, I should mention our co-host today is Matt Clark, who is interested in nature as well.
Yes, that's right. I'm still here.
All right. So that was the scarlet tanager. That's a male scarlet tanager. They eat in the spring and the fall. They eat fruit, so they can be attracted by putting out oranges and things. And that's something I wasn't going to show you yet.
Yeah, I
but,
know you are a real proponent of bird feeders, and I'm just gonna tell my audience because it is a riot. It kind of culminated. He started off with like, different feed, like the oranges can bring in different birds, and it culminated with Andrew asking if we could have a mealworm farm in our basement.
There are a lot of great birds that eat insects, and we could attract them, including actually the scarlet tanager in summer. So the reason we don't have any around the house right now is because we don't have a mealworm farm.
That's a bit of a stretch for us.
So just chew on that for a little while.
Okay.
But yeah, we've had lots of success at our bird feeder. Let me show you an image of our bird feeder. With a female cardinal and 2 goldfinches. And so those are sort of the more normal birds that you might expect to see because they come pretty readily to bird feeders. But there actually are lots of other really neat, brightly colored birds out there. Like, for example, the red-winged blackbirds that I was talking about.
By the way, when you're sharing, at the top of your screen is a red stop share. So you don't have to close that picture window.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
And if anyone's wondering, the tent-like structure is my daughter's garden.
Yes. So here's what a male red-winged blackbird looks like in flight. And you can see how they got the name. They're blackbirds with red wings.
Yeah.
And they are pretty easy to photograph because they tend to gather in wetlands. They make a very cool sound in fairly large numbers, and they're not too afraid of humans. So you can actually view a pretty good number of them all at once.
I actually see them. I actually see them a lot just outside the HCAM office.
Oh yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, they're around that pond.
Oh, no kidding.
For that.
Yeah, they are neat birds. I really like them.
So I assume they're very common?
They're fairly common. Yep. Sort of anywhere that you have water, you're fairly likely to see red-winged blackbirds. This is another view of one in flight, so you can see the extent of the red patch on its wings. And let me zoom in a little bit on that so you can see the detail a little bit better. You can see they've got sort of that orange patch, and then it fades to yellow, and then it's black the rest of the way.
Wow, you get that guy really in focus.
Yeah, that's a good shot.
I was pretty proud of that. And interestingly, the females, which you don't see as often, don't look anything like the male red-winged blackbirds. This is a female. They look like large sparrows. And you don't see them as often because they don't sing very much. That's mostly the male's job, and they're not really as flashy, but they are around. They're the same size, and a lot of times you see them carrying grubs or something like that for the young blackbirds.
That's amazing. That is, I would never put that into the same species.
Yeah. They're the same shape, but a completely different color, completely different pattern. They're neat like that.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, I know this, but for some of our viewers who don't, how do you know how you would typically differentiate between male and female birds?
I know that for for some birds, size is a factor, especially for raptors. And for others, there are plumage variations, but I don't know of any general method.
I do mean mostly for songbirds.
Okay.
You are right on the raptors too, which for people who don't know, raptors are predatory birds, not the dinosaurs. My friend got that confused when I was talking about that a few weeks ago, which is the only reason I bring that up. You're right though. Male birds are almost always brightly colored.
Yes, yeah, they tend to be the brighter ones, and they're trying to attract.
Yeah, really evidenced by the cardinals.
Yes.
But
yeah.
I'll tell you, you know what? The female cardinals with those cute little orange beaks, oh, they're just adorable.
All right, so
What else we got?
let's see. Let me show you a bird that's maybe a little less, not less common, but less commonly seen, because they're a little shyer. It's a bird called a common yellowthroat, and it's a type of warbler. So it's this little guy here. This is a male.
Oh wow.
And you can see it's got this very striking black mask, a gray back, and a yellow throat. That's the name. But
If
these
If somebody asked me where was that, I would say in a rainforest somewhere. It looks
Yeah.
so tropical.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yep. Surprisingly, it's about 20 feet away from a power line. Right here in Upton. And these little guys live in bushes and shrubbery, kind of near the ground, and they're very pretty.
Yeah, they are. Are they about the size of a sparrow or a
Yeah, yep. Yellowthroats are about sparrow-sized. And speaking of sparrows, let me show you a pretty striking sparrow that you might not expect to be a sparrow if you saw it around. I certainly didn't. I thought at first that it might be a relative of the rose-breasted grosbeak, but it's not.
Mhm.
This is the eastern towhee. This is a male singing. And there's the tower for the power line right there. But here he is. And
Wow.
these actually are large sparrows. They're a little bit
wow.
smaller than a robin, but very boldly colored with the black and the white and the chestnut brown. And if you were to see one in flight, it's pretty striking because you can't see it in this photo, but the undersides of their tails are patterned black and white. So it's a pretty striking display when they get up there and fly. And
I see the name up there, towhee. That's an interesting name.
yes, it's actually phonetic. They make a sound like to-to-hee.
Oh.
So if you hear anything like that, it may be a male eastern towhee.
Okay.
And the females of this species also look different and are slightly less boldly colored. This is one here, but actually also pretty beautiful. They look similar, except that instead of black, they have this kind of chocolate brown color. And I think they're quite neat. They're hard to find because they don't sing as often. They're not as conspicuous, but they are worth seeing.
So that was female of the towhee.
Yes.
Okay, male.
Yes.
We got a question from Nana.
Okay.
Wondering if males are more colorful, and we talked about a couple of birds that seem that way. How uniform is it that males are typically more colorful than females?
It's pretty uniform. Offhand, I don't think I can think of a species of songbird where the female would be the more colorful of the two. And it's definitely true that in birds of prey, that's not the case. It's almost reversed in a way. They tend to have the same plumage, but the females are larger and stronger. And generally, falconers and such prefer the females because they're able to take larger prey.
Yeah.
But coloration-wise, I think it's pretty uniform in the bird world that if there's a difference, the males are going to be the more colorful.
Okay.
But here is an example of a bird where there is no difference. I'm going to show you a cedar waxwing, which is a very neat bird in which males and females look identical. but this is
This one's in the witness protection program.
yeah, this guy's in a shadow, unfortunately. If he would have moved like 2 inches to the left, he would have been in some good sun, but he didn't. These are very cool birds. You can see they're kind of cardinal shaped, maybe a little bit smaller than a cardinal, but they're sort of a brown and gray, and they're called cedar waxwings because although you can't really see it in this picture that I took with my cell phone, each bird has a very bright red spot at the tip of its wings, as though somebody had spilled some sealing wax on it.
Can we zoom on that a little bit?
We can zoom, but it won't do very much.
Okay.
Because I took this with my
Cell
cell
phone.
phone and the resolution is not the best. But
No,
yeah, you
that's
can
pretty
actually
good.
kind of see the wax,
Yes. Yeah.
the little red spot.
Oh, I thought it was on the underside of their wings that had the spots.
Yeah, it mostly is. But when the wings are closed, you can see a very small red mark on some individuals.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow, that's quite the tuft of hair.
Yeah.
That's like pandemic hair right there.
Yeah. They're pretty showy. And these guys eat fruit and also during some seasons insects.
Cool.
And they're some of my favorites. I really like them. But for those of us who are more into raptors, I also have a couple pictures of a red-tailed hawk. In the particular habitat that I've been exploring, I see them often, but not for very long, because they are predators of red-winged blackbirds, and consequently, red-winged blackbirds don't like them very much, and they chase these birds off. Sorry. And they're able to do that because even though hawks are very large and strong and fast, they're not as agile as smaller birds like red-winged blackbirds. So if you have 2 or 3 red-winged blackbirds, they can kind of outmaneuver the hawk and they'll dive at it and harry it away. This is an image where you can really see the red tail that gives it its name, which is only present on adults. The younger birds don't have that.
Okay.
But it's the most common hawk that we have in this area.
All right. As you set up the next one, Tom popped in here because he's got a YouTube question.
Hey,
Okay.
Andrew.
Hi.
Andrew on YouTube wanted to know, is it true what they say that the male is more colorful because it wants to attract the female?
That is in fact true. Yes. That is typically the use of the plumage. And I believe the overarching reason for this is that the beautiful plumage displays that it's a healthy, strong bird, and it's been able to find the nutrients it needs to survive, and so it will be a suitable mate for a female.
Great.
And then let me show you one of the probably more visually stunning birds we have around here is the Baltimore Oriole. And some of you may be familiar with them. They're surprisingly common. And in spring and fall, they can be attracted by placing out slices of oranges for them. They really like oranges because in the spring and fall, they eat fruits. In the summer, they eat mealworms, which unfortunately we don't have any. But they eat fruits, and they're especially attracted to the color orange, much as hummingbirds are attracted to the color red. So oranges are an especially good fruit for them.
It's so funny. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, you can see in this picture that they're very strikingly black and orange in color.
Yeah, it's amazing that you say they're very common. I don't remember seeing one before until this year, until we had the oranges out there.
Yeah, they're a little bit shy, so that's probably why.
I've seen them very sparingly in my life, but this season we actually have a nest of them in my backyard.
Oh, no kidding.
That's
that must be awesome.
It is really cool.
All right, get some pictures of that. Here's an example of one in flight. They're pretty easy to see in flight because they're so colorful.
They really are like neon. Like
I know it's unless you see one, you almost can't imagine how orange they are.
I know.
But you can see they've got
cone orange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've got like splotches of orange and black kind of all over them. And you can see there's a pattern to it. But from the front, you'll notice that they've they actually look almost entirely orange on the belly with
Oh, that's a
that
good one.
black head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good for the coloring.
Yeah, yeah. So those are really, really
But
cool.
now this picture makes it kind of look like there's some gradient. But is there a gradient, or are they pretty uniformly super orange?
I think they are a little bit darker and brighter towards the chest, but otherwise they're definitely pretty uniform.
Okay. Just gorgeous.
Yeah, they're really attractive birds. And then now that you've seen these pretty birds, let me give you an ugly bird with kind of a cool story. I am about to show you the brown-headed cowbird, which is so named because it has a brown head and it hangs around cows.
We're not going to ask why.
It's because the cows stir up insects for them to eat.
Oh, that's not too bad then.
Yeah. But this is the brown-headed cowbird, which interestingly is an obligate brood parasite, which doesn't sound nice, and it's not nice. They don't build nests. The females will lay about 30 eggs per season, and they'll lay each egg in the nest of some other bird. They'll kick out one of that bird's eggs to make room for it, and then it will hatch into a cowbird. And generally, the parent will think that the baby cowbird is one of its own babies, and will raise it, and thus the cowbird parent doesn't have to do any work.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it definitely has mixed results. They lay so many eggs because they're not at all picky about where they lay their eggs. They've found cowbird eggs in hummingbird nests and hawk nests, and neither of those birds have diets suitable for cowbirds, so those young cowbirds are doomed. But they have a particularly insistent begging call, which makes the parent think that it's always hungry, and it will feed that bird preferentially to its own children. Interestingly, studies have shown that some species of bird, if there's a cowbird in the nest, the other young will change the way they beg. Their begging calls will be different to try to compete with the cowbird so that they also can survive.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It is, but it also it's not a nice story.
No, nothing about the cowbird story is nice. But they are pretty neat, so I wanted to share that story.
Yeah.
And now let's move on to a much more pleasant bird. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get a picture of an actual pileated woodpecker. I've only seen one twice for pretty brief times, but this is evidence of a pileated woodpecker, a hole in a tree. You can tell because pileated woodpeckers make kind of an oblong hole, and also they make holes much, much bigger than any other woodpecker would, because there are no other woodpeckers of this size really anywhere in North America.
And what is this size?
Not anymore.
They're about the size of a crow. Yeah, not anymore. The ivory-billed woodpecker was a close relative, but is probably extinct.
So what was the biggest woodpecker ever known?
The biggest woodpecker ever known was the imperial woodpecker, also a close relative of the ivory bill and the pileated woodpecker, which was slightly bigger and lived in Cuba, and I believe in certain areas of Mexico. But that is almost definitely extinct at this point. But these birds are really impressive. They're woodpeckers the size of a crow, and they've got this enormous red crest, giant woodpecker bills, and they've got white markings on their wings, so when they fly, it's like a flash of black and white. It's really impressive to see. And if you hear a loud woodpecker somewhere, that's probably what it is, because they're incredibly loud when they peck on the wood.
Okay.
They're cavity nesters. They're actually really good for the environment because they create holes to raise their young in, which later can be reused by other cavity nesters like wood ducks and similar things. So those are really cool birds. Let's see what else we have here.
By the way, if you have a lot, we have about 4 minutes left.
All right. I'll cut right to the chase and give you my coolest bird.
Well, we have 4 minutes, so we don't have to rush right into it.
All right. Here is the prairie warbler, a bird that I actually discovered for the first time just the other day. And you can see it's a small yellow bird with these sort of bold black markings on it. And it gives kind of a rising series of calls, which is interesting. It's sort of a rising buzzing sound that you can hear in their sort of meadowy habitat. Turns out there are lots of warblers in Massachusetts. You wouldn't think so, but there are bright little birds like this all over the place. They just tend to be kind of shy, and because they eat insects, don't readily come to bird feeders.
So tell me about that. You've got some good pictures of some warblers that are incredibly shy. What do you do to get these?
So typically, in order to find birds, I go out into some bird habitat. I use the meadows nearby, and the best way to find them really is to listen, because lots of songbirds, especially at this time of year, vocalize, and you can hear them and you can track them down that way. It's good to know some of the calls of the more common birds around here, like the chickadee or the tufted titmouse, because then you know when one of those is calling, and you also know when something that's not one of those is calling, and you can kind of home in on that. And it can be frustrating because a lot of these birds are really hard to see. There was a towhee in front of me, probably 10 feet away, and I could hear it, but I couldn't see it. And I was trying to find this bird, but I couldn't see it anywhere. And finally, it jumped up in a bush, and I realized it had been in front of me all along.
Wow.
So even some of these really brightly colored birds are sometimes tricky to find.
Yeah.
But many times they like to hang out at the tops of bushes or trees, and you can see them that way.
And what about time? Do you spend a lot of time?
Yeah. Typically I'll spend a couple hours out there looking for birds, because it takes some patience to find them, and also a lot of luck. So the morning is definitely the best time. I don't really go in the morning because I'm not awake in the morning. But if you are awake in the morning, that's a great time to see songbirds, because that's when they're most active.
Okay.
All right. And do we have time for maybe one more bird?
Yep.
All right.
Matt, what's your favorite one? What was your favorite bird sighting that you had?
I would have to probably say I have an aunt and uncle who live on Lake Maspinock, and I was at a cookout at their house a few years ago, and I managed to spy a bald eagle flying over.
Nice.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Those are impressive birds.
Yep.
Incredibly.
And for my last trick, this is a great blue heron flying towards the left that I saw near the beaver pond. Interestingly, you wouldn't think of herons being the kind of bird that would land in a tree, but they do sometimes. And this one actually did for me. It landed in a tree. It looked pretty funny, but they're really fascinating birds, especially when you compare them to kingfishers and ospreys and other fishing type birds who've developed such different methods of achieving the same result of grabbing a fish. These birds stand with their long skinny legs, and then they stab with their faces, whereas kingfishers dive beak first and grab fish in their beaks, and ospreys descend from the sky and grab things with their talons, as do bald eagles. So kind of same problem, lots of different answers.
Right. Wow. So what's your favorite bird sighting, Andrew?
Earlier this year, I got a good look at a snowy owl.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah, it was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, it was in Newburyport, which is a really great place to spot all kinds of birds, but especially raptors and other owls. And I was able to get probably within a couple 100 feet of this snowy owl, and it was just, they are impressive looking birds.
Not for me. I saw one once. It was so far away.
You saw one from like 3/4 of a mile away.
I know. It looked like one of those white grocery bags that had
Yeah.
just blown out onto the tundra.
Even through a telescope, it was
All right, you need to
It was
stop
pretty-
sharing now.
okay.
Thank you. All right, Andrew, thank you so much. We're really running out of time, but I want to say I want you to come back because Andrew also spends a lot of time at Lake Wasika, and I'd like to hear some stories and some pictures from there.
Yes. All right. Well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to ruin Lake Wasika. We don't want all kinds of viewers descending there.
We'll talk. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks for having me. Bye. Bye.